What is up, my dudes, and welcome back to another video. So, I get a lot of people asking if there's a simple way to remove the background from an image. And the short answer is yes. There's a cool little tool in Photoshop called the background eraser tool, and it can do a really good job of doing exactly what it says and removing the background. It just depends on the image you're editing. So in this case, I've got an image with a block color background, so a blue sky or something that's all one color. If there was a bit of clutter in the background, a bit of mess, so a bunch of different colors, it would struggle a bit more and you would need to take a lot more time. However, I'm going to use this image for an example. So just to show you what you can do with it, I've kind of left this seagull looking all confused and in space. But what you'll notice is it does a really good job of being quite bespoke around the edges and bringing out the feathers and stuff like that. It can be really clean. It just, as I said, depends on the image you're editing. So to learn how to use the tool, let's understand it. If you head halfway down your tools to the left, you've got the eraser tool. And if you click and hold on that, you can then bring up your background eraser tool. And the first thing you'll notice is there's a crosshair in the middle of your brush. That's essentially a sampling crosshair. So anytime I click, whatever that's hovered over will sample. So I'm currently hovered over blue. If I click, it will sample blue and begin to erase that. So that's a sampling crosshair. If we look at the top here, these are our options for the brush. And the first thing you'll notice is we get these sort of three prominent symbols here, and these are our sampling options. So the first one is continuous sampling, which is exactly what it sounds like. It will continuously sample for colors as you're erasing. So if I click on blue and then head over to yellow, it will continuously sample from blue to yellow and then from yellow to white and from white to the eyeball, and it will erase whatever you're currently clicking on. The sample in once option will only sample one color. So if I click and sample the blue, it will now only erase that color no matter what I hover over. So that may be the best option for this tool. It's the one that I tend to use more, but it depends on what you're using it for. The limits are a bit harder to explain. So to try and explain them, I've drawn this little chart up here. So we get three types of limits, but we're not going to go over the find edges. It's essentially the same thing as contiguous. If you really want to know what it is, then feel free to Google it, but I won't be covering it in this video. The only two we're going to go through are contiguous and discontiguous. So a contiguous limit is this top line here. So it's a blue pixel upon a blue pixel upon a blue pixel. That's a contiguous line of pixels because they're separated by nothing. A discontiguous line is the example below where it's blue, blue, red, red, blue, blue. That's discontiguous because there's two red pixels breaking up the two blues. So to try and put this into perspective, if I grab my brush tool and I just draw a white line on the corner of the image, you'll notice I'm resizing my brush there. That's with the square brackets on my keyboard. So the left one makes it smaller and the right one makes it bigger. But if I just draw a curve here really roughly, I can bring up my background eraser tool and using the two limits, show you what I mean. So a contiguous limit will take into account anything that's this side of the white line because it's looking for that contiguous row of color like this. So if I begin to erase here, it should only erase anything that's on this side of the line because it's broken up by that line, right? If I undo that and change it to the discontiguous line, which is the bottom one, it doesn't really care for this discontiguous block of colors here. So it will erase anything that's blue within the image and it doesn't care for that white line. The white line means nothing. It doesn't stop it erasing anything the other side of it. So that's the difference. A contiguous takes into account that row of blue and the discontiguous doesn't. It will just erase anything. Hopefully that makes sense. I could have done a terrible job. And then the final thing we want to look out for is the tolerance. So the tolerance is a big part of the background eraser tool. It sort of decides how much of one color you're going to remove. So if I bring my tolerance all the way down, it's going to be very difficult to erase all of this blue because it's going to take into account every shade of blue it can. So if I click and begin to erase, you'll notice it's not giving me any leeway for the blues. It's saying that this color of blue here is a very different shade from this, so it's not going to erase it. It's being very strict. If I undo that and up my tolerance all the way to the top, it's going to be a lot more lenient. It doesn't really care what shade of blue we're erasing as long as it's blue. The only problem with that is all of the colors that are in the chart are made up by blue, so you'll notice it begins to erase some of the image as well because of the blues within that image. So you need to get the right balance of tolerance. I know from first-hand experience from editing this image that it's around about 45%. So if I whack it on that, I can just go through and really quickly erase over this image. So yours is obviously going to be different. It depends on the image itself. But for this one in particular, it's about 45%. And you'll notice straight off the bat, it does a really, really good job at removing the background. The only thing I will say is it's not until you put another color in replacement for the one we've just erased that you notice there is still a bit of mess around, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I create a new layer by selecting our new layer icon and I drag that first, I'm just going to fill this with a black. So if I set my secondary color here to black, and then with this layer selected, hit Control or Command and Backspace, it will fill this layer in with our secondary color. So if this was red, it would do the same. But in this case, I'm just going to use a black. So that's Control and Backspace, and it will fill that layer with one block color. But the first thing you notice is there's still this hue of blue around the image, right? And that's because although our tolerance was at 45%, it's not picked up this blue here. So there's two ways to get rid of this. We can, again, just using our background eraser tool, we can reselect our layer, click on this blue and then go through and erase, but you'll see there's still a little bit of mess around, and then I would have to click in that blue again and go through and erase, but there's still a bit of mess around, and that's going to take a long time. So what I tend to do is holding Control on my keyboard, I'll select the layer that I want to erase, so in this case the seagull, and it will create this selection around our image. And then using any marquee tool, so if I just head up to my rectangular marquee, I can right click in my selection, hit select inverse, and then just using my keyboard delete shortcut, I can just get rid of that hue that we just had. So if I undo that, you'll see there's like a green hue down here, and if I just hit delete on my keyboard, that gets rid of it all. And that makes for a really good cutout. And that's what the background eraser tool can do for you. So from there you could sort of make this whatever you wanted. I could put my background to a blue, or in this case a space pigeon slash seagull. I don't know what you want to call this, but you could go through and put whatever in, um, and that's sort of, yeah, I mean, that's the background eraser tool. It can be great, it just depends on the image you're using. So hopefully that helped. Hopefully that helped you understand what the background eraser tool does, and what those limitations are and the sampling is around it. If there was anything you was confused about, if there anything I could have explained better, please do let me know. If you did like the video itself, or the tutorial, or whatever you want to call it, please do subscribe. I'm going to be doing a bunch of them, and it always helps to get your feedback. And alternatively, please do send me any of the images you edit, because I enjoy looking at them all. It helps me to understand where you guys are good and where you guys struggle a bit, and also it helps me to see if my videos are actually helping at all. Um, but yeah, other than that, you guys have a great day, and thank you for watching.